4 rich men humiliated her in front of everyone, refusing to pay their bill just because they could. She stood there trembling, powerless, until the doors opened behind them. The mafia boss who broke her heart 3 years ago just called her his fiancée. The crystal chandeliers above cast dancing shadows across the white tablecloth as Ava balanced 4 plates of lobster thermidor on her arms. Her feet ached in the cheap shoes she'd bought 3 weeks ago, the only pair she could afford after paying rent. The luxury ski resort where she worked smelled like money and expensive cologne, a constant reminder of everything she'd lost. Finally, one of the men at table 7 sneered as she approached. "We've been waiting forever." Ava forced a smile. "I apologize for the delay, gentlemen. Your lobster thermidor with. Do you have any idea who we are?" The man closest to her leaned back in his chair, his Rolex catching the light. His 3 companions laughed, their faces flushed from expensive wine. "I'm sure you're very important, sir." Ava set the plates down carefully, her hands steady despite her racing heart. She'd learned to swallow her pride months ago, when pride stopped paying bills. The man grabbed her wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to stop her from leaving. "We just closed a $50 million deal today." $50 million. You probably don't even know what that number looks like, written down. Ava pulled her hand back gently. "Congratulations. Can I get you anything else?" Actually, another man spoke up, studying her face with unsettling intensity. His eyes narrowed. "Wait. I know you." Ava's blood ran cold. "Ethan, what are you talking about?" the first man asked. Ethan Ward stood up slowly, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "Ava Chun." "You're Ava Chun," he turned to his friends, gesturing dramatically. "Gentlemen, we're being served by royalty tonight." Her father used to own Chun Industries, had contracts with half the companies in the state. The word "used to" hit Ava like a punch to the stomach. "What happened to Daddy's empire, sweetheart?" Ethan continued, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. "Oh, that's right. Bad investments. Poor business decisions. Company went bankrupt, didn't it? 3 years ago." Ava's fingernails dug into her palms. "Will there be anything else?" "My father bought your dad's company for pennies," Ethan said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Other diners were starting to stare. "Stripped it for parts. Made a fortune. Your father was weak. Bad at business. That's just how the world works." That was a lie. Ava knew it was a lie. Her father had been brilliant, honest, careful. But 3 years ago, everything fell apart impossibly fast. Contracts disappeared. Partners backed out, banks called in loans all at once. Her father died of a heart attack 6 months after losing everything. Her mother followed a year later, broken by grief. "The bill for your table is $847, Ava said quietly, pulling the check from her apron. "Whenever you're ready." Ethan snatched the bill and tore it in half. "We're not paying." The other 3 men laughed. "Excuse me?" Ava said. "You heard me. We're not paying." Ethan crossed his arms. "The service was terrible. The food was cold. And frankly, I find it offensive that a place this nice would hire someone from such a fallen family. It's bad for the ambience." Ava's manager, Marcus, appeared at her elbow. "Is there a problem here?" "Yes," Ethan said smoothly. "Your waitress has been rude and incompetent all evening. We're not paying for this disaster of a meal. And if you try to charge us, I'll make sure my lawyer has this restaurant shut down by morning. My family owns half the businesses in this valley." Marcus's face went pale. Ava had seen that look before, the look of someone calculating whether justice was worth the cost. "Ava," Marcus said quietly, "maybe you should apologize to these gentlemen." "What?" Ava stared at him. "Marcus, I didn't do anything wrong. They're lying." "Ava," Marcus's voice was harder now. "Apologize." The dining room had gone silent. 50 pairs of eyes watched her. The other waitresses looked away, embarrassed for her. The guests whispered behind their hands. Ethan Ward smiled like a shark. Ava's hands trembled. 3 years of struggling, of scraping by, of swallowing insults and enduring humiliation. All of it crashed over her at once. She thought of her father's study, the way he used to review contracts late into the night. She thought of her mother's garden, abandoned and overgrown now. She thought of the life she'd had, the future she'd lost. "No," Ava said. Marcus's eyes widened. "Ava." "No," louder this time. "I won't apologize. They're lying. They ate everything on their plates. They're refusing to pay because they can, because they think people like me don't matter." Ethan stood up, buttoning his jacket. "We're leaving. Sue us if you want. You'll be buried in legal fees before you can blink." The four men started toward the exit, laughing and congratulating each other on the free meal. Ava felt tears burning in her eyes, but refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of everyone. The glass doors at the entrance slid open with a soft hiss. A man stepped inside, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black coat dusted with fresh snow. His dark hair was slightly too long, his face all sharp angles and cold eyes. He moved with the kind of quiet confidence that made people step aside without being asked. Ava's heart stopped. The four men nearly walked into him. Ethan stumbled back. "Excuse us, we're leaving." The man in black didn't move. He looked past them, his gaze locking onto Ava across the dining room. For a moment, something flickered in his expression. Recognition, concern, something almost tender. Then his eyes went cold as winter ice. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice low and precise, with the faintest trace of an accent. "I couldn't help but overhear." He stepped forward, positioning himself directly behind the four men. "Why, exactly, are you disrespecting my fiancé?" The entire restaurant went silent. Ava couldn't breathe. Nikolai Volkov, the man who disappeared from her life without explanation 3 years ago, the man she'd loved and hated in equal measure ever since, stood in the doorway like a ghost made flesh. And he'd just called her his fiancé. Ethan's confident smirk vanished. "You're what?" Nikolai took another step forward, forcing the four men to back up against a table. His movements were unhurried, almost casual, but there was something predatory in the way he closed the distance. "My fiancé. Is there a problem with your hearing, or just your manners?" "Look, friend, I think there's been a misunderstanding," the first man started. "I'm not your friend." Nikolai's voice could have frozen the champagne in their glasses. He pulled off his leather gloves slowly, one finger at a time. "And there's no misunderstanding. You ate dinner. You insulted the waitress. You refused to pay." He tucked the gloves into his coat pocket. "Did I miss anything, Ava?" Ava's mind was spinning. 3 years. 3 years without a word, without an explanation, and now he just walked in like no time had passed? But something in his eyes warned her to play along. "They tore up the bill," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. $847. $847, Nikolai repeated, as if memorizing it. He reached inside his coat. The four men flinched. Nikolai pulled out a wallet. Black leather, simple, worn. He counted out $900 bills without looking down, his eyes never leaving Ethan's face. 900. The extra is for Ava's trouble. He held the money out. Nobody moved to take it. "Here's what's going to happen," Nikolai continued, his voice soft but carrying across the silent restaurant. "You're going to apologize to Ava. Then you're going to walk out of here quietly. And tomorrow morning, you're going to forget this evening ever happened." He paused. "Are we clear?" Ethan tried to salvage his dignity. "Do you know who I am?" "My family owns Ward Industries." Nikolai's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Your father is Richard Ward. Your company has holdings in real estate, manufacturing, and a suspicious number of offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. You graduated from Princeton with mediocre grades and a cocaine problem you think nobody knows about. You drive a silver Porsche, license plate EDW, 2024, currently parked in spot 47 of the resort lot." The color drained from Ethan's face. "Shall I continue?" Nikolai asked pleasantly. "Or would you prefer to apologize?" The other three men were already backing toward the door. One of them grabbed Ethan's arm.
Come on, man.
Let's just go. I'm sorry, Ethan muttered, not meeting Ava's eyes. Louder, Nikolai said. Everyone should hear you.
I'm sorry.
Ethan's voice cracked with rage and humiliation. We were wrong. The service was fine. Nikolai handed the money to Marcus, who took it with shaking hands. For the meal and for any distress caused to your staff. I trust we won't have any further issues. Marcus nodded frantically.
No, sir.
No issues. None at all. The four men practically ran for the exit. The glass doors slid shut behind them with a definitive click. For a moment, nobody in the restaurant moved. Then the whispers started, low, urgent, spreading like wildfire from table to table. Ava caught fragments. The Volkov thought he was in Europe. Nikolai turned to her, and suddenly they might as well have been alone in the room. Up close, she could see the new lines around his eyes, the small scar on his jaw that hadn't been there before. He looked older, harder, like the years had carved something essential out of him. Ava, he said, and her name in his voice made her heart twist painfully. We need to talk. Need to talk. The words came out sharper than she intended. You disappear for 3 years without a word, and now you need to talk. Not here, his eyes flicked to the watching crowd, then to Marcus, who was still clutching the $900 like it might explode. Please. Ava yanked off her apron and threw it on the nearest table. Her shift was over anyway. She was supposed to work until 10, but Marcus could figure it out. 3 years of questions, of wondering if Nikolai was alive or dead, of lying awake trying to understand why he'd left. All of it was boiling over.
Fine, she said.
We'll talk. Outside. She pushed past him, through the glass doors, into the freezing mountain night. Snow was falling steadily now, covering the parking lot in white. The cold hit her like a slap. She'd forgotten her coat in her locker, but she wasn't going back for it. Behind her, she heard Nikolai's footsteps crunching in the snow. Ava, wait.
She spun around. 3 years, Nikolai.
3 years. My father died. My mother died. I lost everything. And you just vanished. I know his face was unreadable in the shadows. I know, and I'm sorry. But I had reasons. Then you better start explaining, Ava said, her voice breaking. Because right now, I don't even know if I want you here. The snow fell heavier now, thick flakes catching in Ava's hair and melting against her flushed cheeks. She was shivering from cold or anger or both. She couldn't tell. Nikolai shrugged off his coat and moved to drape it over her shoulders. Don't. Ava stepped back. Don't act like you care now. He held the coat between them, patient. You're freezing. I don't need your help, but her teeth were chattering, betraying her. After a moment, she snatched the coat and pulled it around herself. It smelled like him. Cedar and smoke and something darker she couldn't name. The scent brought back memories she'd tried to bury. Late nights in his apartment, his laugh, the way he'd made her feel safe in a world that suddenly made sense. Before he destroyed it all by leaving.
Talk, she demanded.
And it better be good. Nikolai's jaw tightened. In the glow from the resort's lights, she could see the exhaustion etched into his features. There were people looking for me. Dangerous people. They found out about you. What people? Dangerous how? Ava wrapped the coat tighter. You never told me anything about your business, Nikolai. You kept me in the dark about everything. Because the dark was safer, his voice was rough. The less you knew, the less leverage they had.
But they found you anyway.
They sent photos. You leaving your apartment, having coffee with your mother, walking to your father's office. They wanted me to know they could reach you anytime. Ava's stomach turned. When? 3 years ago. March 15th, he said the date like it was burned into his memory. The day before I left. They gave me an ultimatum. Walk away from you completely, disappear, or they'd kill you to punish me for interfering in their operations. March 15th. That was 2 days before her father's company started falling apart. 2 days before everything went wrong. So you just left. Ava's voice rose. You didn't think to tell me?
To warn me?
You just vanished like I meant nothing. If I told you, you would have tried to stay. You would have fought it. Nikolai moved closer, his boots crunching in the snow. And they would have killed you, Ava. I couldn't, his voice cracked. I couldn't let that happen. My father died thinking he was a failure. Tears were streaming down her face now, hot against the cold air. My mother stopped eating, stopped living. I had to bury them both. I lost my home, my future, everything I knew. And you weren't there. You left me alone with all of it. I was there. The words were almost a whisper. Not close, but I was there. At your father's funeral, I was in the black sedan across the street. When you moved into that tiny apartment on Maple Street, I made sure the landlord didn't raise your rent. Every job interview you went to, every shift you worked, I had people watching, making sure you stayed safe. Ava stared at him, speechless. I know it doesn't fix anything, Nikolai continued. I know it doesn't make up for what you went through. But I never abandoned you, Ava. I loved you enough to stay away. That's not love. She shoved his chest hard. He barely moved. Love is staying. Love is fighting together. Love is trusting me enough to let me make my own choices. And if I had stayed, if they'd killed you because of me? His composure finally cracked, raw emotion flooding his face. Could you live with that? Because I couldn't. I can't. They stood in the snow, breathing hard, years of pain and anger and unspoken words hanging between them like ghosts. Why come back now? Ava asked finally. Why tonight? Nikolai's expression shifted, became carefully neutral again. Because the threat is gone. The men who wanted me dead, they're either imprisoned or eliminated. I've spent 3 years making sure of it. And because he hesitated. Because I found something you need to know. What? Your father's company didn't fail because of bad decisions. It was sabotaged. Nikolai pulled out his phone, thumbed it open, and showed her a screen full of financial documents. Those men in the restaurant, Ethan Ward and his friends, they orchestrated the entire collapse. Fake contracts, bribed officials, coordinated bank pressure. They destroyed Chin Industries on purpose to acquire it cheap. Ava grabbed the phone, her hands shaking so badly she could barely read the screen. But the numbers were there, clear as day. Patterns of fraud. Email exchanges. Transfer records. This is evidence, she whispered. This could clear your father's name. Yes, Nikolai's voice was gentle now. But there's more, Ava. And it's going to get dangerous. That's why I need you to trust me. Just one more time. Ava looked up at him, this man she'd loved and lost and never stopped thinking about. The snow fell around them like stars. I don't know if I can, she said honestly. Then let me earn it back, Nikolai said. Starting now. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and old paperwork. Ava sat in a hard plastic chair, Nikolai's coat still wrapped around her shoulders, staring at the detective across the metal desk. Detective Sarah Morrison was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with graying hair pulled back in a practical bun. Let me make sure I understand, Morrison said, clicking her pen repeatedly. You're telling me that Ward Industries, one of the largest employers in this county, systematically destroyed your father's company through fraud 3 years ago? Yes, Ava's voice was hoarse. They've been here for 2 hours already, ever since Nikolai drove them straight from the resort. My father didn't make bad investments. He was set up. Morrison glanced at Nikolai, who stood by the window like a sentinel. And you are? Nikolai Volkov. I'm a consultant. I've been investigating Ward Industries for 18 months. He moved to the desk and placed a thick folder in front of Morrison. Everything you need is in there. Financial records, email chains, witness testimonies. Ethan Ward and 3 of his associates, James Chun, Michael Russo, and David Park, have been running a sophisticated operation for 5 years. Morrison opened the folder, her pen clicking stopping abruptly. Her eyes widened as she scanned the first page, then the second. Where did you get this? I have connections in various industries, Nikolai said carefully. When I learned what happened to Ava's father, I started digging. The pattern became clear quickly. They target mid-sized family companies, sabotage them through legal loopholes and bribed officials, then acquire the assets through shell corporations. Chin Industries wasn't the only one? Ava asked, her voice small. Morrison flipped through more pages. According to this, there are at least 12 other companies, all destroyed the same way. She looked up at Nikolai. This is federal crime territory. RICO charges, conspiracy, wide fraud. Why bring this to me instead of the FBI? Because the FBI has an agent in Ward's pocket, Nikolai said flatly. Agent Marcus Brennan, Denver field office. He's been tipping them off about investigations for 2 years. It's documented on page 47. Morrison turned to the page, read silently, and her jaw tightened.
Jesus Christ.
Ava felt like the room was spinning. My father. He didn't do anything wrong. He was careful, honest. I watched him work late every night, checking everything twice. Her voice broke. He died thinking he failed. He had a heart attack in his office, surrounded by bankruptcy papers, believing it was all his fault. Morrison's expression softened. Miss Chen, I'm sorry. Truly. If this evidence holds up and it looks solid, then your father was murdered. Maybe not directly, but they killed him as surely as if they'd pulled a trigger. The words hung in the air. Murdered. Ava had known, deep down, that something was wrong. But hearing it confirmed, hearing it said out loud by a police detective, made it real in a way she wasn't prepared for. There's more, Nikolai said quietly. Show her page 63. Morrison turned to the page and went pale. They're using charity foundations to launder money. The Alpine Children's Fund, Summit Healthcare Initiative. These are real charities that help real people. Which is exactly why they chose them, Nikolai said. Hard to investigate without looking like you're attacking children's hospitals and youth programs. They donate publicly, get tax breaks and good press, and funnel dirty money through the organizations. The actual charity work gets maybe 20% of the funds. The rest disappears into offshore accounts. Ava thought of the charity event posters she'd seen plastered around the resort. They're hosting a gala tomorrow night. At the resort. The Alpine Children's Fund annual dinner. Morrison looked up sharply. With press. State senators supposed to attend, Ava said. It's a big deal. Tickets are $5,000 a plate. Perfect. Morrison closed the folder. They'll be surrounded by cameras, donors, and witnesses. Arrogant enough to think they're untouchable, she stood, gathering the documents. I need to make some calls. Federal prosecutor, maybe the state attorney general's office. This is bigger than local jurisdiction. How long? Nikolai asked. To build a case? Normally months. But with this evidence, Morrison tapped the folder. If we move fast, we could have warrants by tomorrow afternoon. We could arrest them at their own party. Ava's heart pounded. What do you need from me? Morrison studied her carefully. Miss Chun, you're the connecting thread. You were there 3 years ago, when your father's company collapsed. You witnessed their behavior tonight at the restaurant. And you're the daughter of one of their victims. That makes you a crucial witness, she paused. But I won't lie to you. The moment we move on this, you become a target. These men have money, lawyers, and connections. They'll come after you hard. They already took everything from me, Ava said, surprised by the steel in her own voice. My father, my mother, my future. What else can they take? Nikolai moved beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. They won't touch you. I'll make sure of it. Morrison looked between them, something unreadable in her expression. Okay. Then we move tomorrow. Be ready. The mountain lodge sat 20 minutes outside town, hidden among pine trees and accessible only by a winding dirt road. Nikolai had driven them there in silence after leaving the police station, the headlights cutting through darkness and falling snow. It was nearly 2 a.m. when they arrived. Inside, the lodge was rustic but comfortable, exposed wooden beams, a stone fireplace, leather furniture that had seen better days. 2 men were waiting when they entered. One was tall and lean with careful eyes. The other was built like a boxer, with scarred knuckles and a face that had been broken and reset more than once. Dmitri, Alexei, Nikolai said by way of introduction. They work with me. You're safe here. Ava was too exhausted to question it. She sank onto the couch, still wearing her waitress uniform under Nikolai's coat, and tried to process everything that had happened in the last 4 hours. Dmitri handed her a glass of water. You should eat something. I'm not hungry. Eat anyway, Alexei said, his accent thicker than Nikolai's. Long day tomorrow. You need strength. Nikolai disappeared into the kitchen and returned with bread, cheese, and cold chicken. He set the plate on the coffee table in front of Ava. Please. She ate mechanically, not tasting anything. The three men spoke in low Russian by the fireplace, their voices a distant hum. When she finished, exhaustion hit her like a wave. There's a bedroom upstairs, Nikolai said, noticing her drooping eyelids. First door on the right. We'll talk in the morning. Ava nodded and climbed the wooden stairs, her legs heavy. The bedroom was simple. A bed with a thick quilt, a small window overlooking the dark forest. She collapsed onto the mattress without bothering to undress and fell asleep within seconds. She woke to pale sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee. For a disorienting moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The restaurant, Ethan Ward, Nikolai, the police station. Her father had been murdered. Not with a weapon, but with calculated cruelty. Ava found clean clothes folded on a chair, jeans, a sweater, thick socks. They fit reasonably well. Someone had planned ahead. Downstairs, Nikolai sat alone at the kitchen table, a laptop open in front of him and a mug of black coffee in his hand. He looked up when she entered. Morning. There's coffee and breakfast. Ava poured herself a cup and sat across from him. In the daylight, she could see the changes in him more clearly. He looked like someone who'd spent 3 years at war. Harder, colder, more dangerous. But when his eyes met hers, she saw a flicker of the man she'd known. Where are your friends? She asked. Perimeter check. Making sure we weren't followed, he closed the laptop. Ava, we need to discuss what happens next. Morrison said she'd move today. Get the warrants. Make the arrests at the gala tonight. That's the plan. But there's something Morrison doesn't know. Nikolai's expression was grim. Ethan Ward has private security. Ex-military, well-armed, and loyal because he pays them extremely well. If he suspects the police are coming, he'll run. He has resources in 6 countries and a private jet at the local airfield. Ava set down her coffee. So, what are you saying? I'm saying we need to keep him at that gala until the warrants are executed. We need him confident, distracted, unaware. Nikolai leaned forward. And the best way to do that is if you're there. Me? At the gala? Ava laughed bitterly. I'm the waitress he humiliated last night. You think he wants me serving him again? Not as a waitress. As my date. Nikolai's voice was steady. I've already purchased tickets. $50,000 for a private table. Nikolai Volkov, recently returned from Europe, making a generous donation. Ethan will see me as a potential business connection. Someone worth impressing. And he'll see me as what? Proof that you have questionable taste in women. He'll see you as someone who's moved on. Someone who's clearly under my protection now. Nikolai's jaw tightened. It'll make him angry, distracted. He won't be thinking about police investigations. He'll be thinking about how to undermine me, how to prove he's still powerful. Ava stood, pacing to the window. Outside, snow covered everything in pristine white. Peaceful. Deceptive. This is insane. These people destroyed my family. And you want me to get dressed up and have dinner with them? I want you to look them in the eyes when the handcuffs go on, Nikolai said quietly. I want you to see justice happen in real time. And I want your father's name cleared in front of everyone who matters. The senator, the press, the community leaders who'll be there. She turned to face him. What if something goes wrong? Then I get you out. That's non-negotiable. He stood, moving toward her. Dmitri and Alexei will be inside as guests. I'll have 3 more men positioned outside. You'll never be more than 10 feet from someone who can protect you. You're asking me to trust you again? I know I don't deserve it, his voice was raw. I know I broke that trust when I left. But I'm asking anyway. One night, Ava. Help me give you justice for your father. Then, if you want, you never have to see me again. The words stung more than she expected. Never see him again. Wasn't that what she wanted? Hadn't she spent 3 years hating him? But standing here now, looking at the man who'd loved her enough to leave and stayed close enough to protect her from the shadows, she wasn't sure what she wanted anymore. Okay, she said finally. I'll do it. For my father. Nikolai's shoulders relaxed slightly. Thank you. But Nikolai? She met his eyes. After tonight, we're going to talk. Really talk. About everything. No more secrets. No more secrets, he agreed softly. I promise. Ava spent the morning reviewing documents on Nikolai's laptop. Endless spreadsheets, emails, financial transactions that painted a picture of systematic corruption. Her father's name appeared repeatedly in files dated 3 years ago, each entry a knife wound in her chest. By noon, her eyes burned and her head throbbed. You need a break, Nikolai said, appearing with a sandwich she didn't remember him making. You've been staring at that screen for 4 hours. I need to understand what they did. Every detail. And you will. But not if you collapse from exhaustion, he set the plate down firmly.
Eat.
Then get some air. There's a path down to the frozen lake. It's safe, and Alexei will keep watch from a distance. Ava wanted to argue, but her body betrayed her with a wave of dizziness. She ate the sandwich, turkey and Swiss, simple but good, and borrowed a heavy jacket from the coat rack by the door. The path through the woods was narrow but well-maintained, winding between snow-laden pines that created a hushed, cathedral-like silence. Her breath came out in white puffs. The cold stung her cheeks, but it felt cleansing somehow, washing away the stuffiness of the lodge and the poison of those documents. The frozen lake appeared through the trees like a secret, a perfect oval of white ice surrounded by forest, mountains rising in the distance. The morning sun made the snow sparkle like diamond dust. Ava stood at the shore, listening to the absolute quiet broken only by the occasional creak of ice and the whisper of wind through branches. This was what peace felt like. She'd almost forgotten. Beautiful, isn't it? Ava spun around. Nikolai stood 10 feet behind her, his hands in his pockets, looking almost uncertain. She hadn't heard him approach. I thought you were working, she said. Dimitri's handling it. I wanted to make sure you were okay. He moved closer, stopping beside her at the lake's edge. You looked like you needed space, but he trailed off. I wanted to be here. In case you needed someone. They stood in silence for a long moment, watching the play of light on ice. I used to come to a lake like this with my father, Ava said finally. When I was little, he'd take me ice skating every winter. Mom would pack hot chocolate in a thermos, and we'd spend hours out there until our faces were numb. She smiled at the memory. He wasn't graceful, kept falling down, making me laugh. But he never stopped trying. He sounds like a good man. He was the best man I ever knew, her voice cracked. He worked so hard, Nikolai. 14-hour days, always honest, always fair to his employees. When everything fell apart, he kept apologizing to me, saying he was sorry for failing, sorry for letting us down. I watched him break, piece by piece, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. Nikolai's hand found hers. She should pull away, maintain her anger, keep her distance. But his touch was warm and solid, and she was so tired of being alone. It wasn't his fault, Nikolai said quietly. You know that now. Knowing doesn't change what happened. Doesn't bring him back. Tears froze on her cheeks. He died thinking he was a failure, and I couldn't tell him the truth because I didn't know it myself. But you can tell the world.
Tonight.
Everyone will know he was a brilliant businessman destroyed by criminals. Nikolai turned to face her fully. That's not nothing, Ava. That's justice. She looked up at him, this complicated man who'd broken her heart to save her life. Why didn't you take me with you? 3 years ago, when you left. Why didn't you at least give me the choice? The question had haunted her through countless sleepless nights. Nikolai was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because I was a coward. I told myself it was to protect you, and that was true. But it was also because I couldn't face you. Couldn't see the hurt in your eyes. Couldn't handle you asking me to stay when I knew I had to go. He squeezed her hand gently. I made the decision for both of us, because making it alone was easier than watching you suffer through it. That wasn't fair.
No.
It wasn't. He met her eyes, and she saw genuine remorse there. I took away your choice because I was afraid you'd choose wrong. But people have the right to make their own mistakes, face their own dangers.
I see that now. I'm sorry, Ava. Truly.
The apology settled something in her chest, not healing the wound, but at least acknowledging it existed. I watched you, Nikolai continued. From a distance, always careful, but I watched. When you got the job at the resort, when you moved apartments, every day you survived and kept going, I was so proud of you. You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for. I didn't feel strong. I felt broken. Broken things that heal are stronger than things that never broke. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch achingly gentle. You're the strongest person I know. Ava's heart hammered against her ribs. The anger she'd nursed for 3 years was still there, but it had shifted, making room for something more complicated. Understanding, maybe, or the beginning of forgiveness. I don't know if I can trust you again, she admitted. I know. But I'll spend however long it takes earning it back. His thumb traced small circles on her hand. If you'll let me. The lake stretched before them, frozen and perfect, waiting for spring. Ask me again after tonight, Ava said softly. When this is all over. Nikolai nodded, and they stood together in the winter silence, connected by touch and shared grief and the fragile possibility of hope. They walked back to the lodge as the sun climbed higher, the morning's peace wrapping around them like a fragile truce. Ava felt lighter somehow, as if speaking the truth aloud had released some pressure she'd been holding for years. The feeling shattered the moment they emerged from the tree line. Dmitri was running toward them, his face grim. We have a problem. Nikolai's entire demeanor shifted instantly, from the gentle man at the lake to something cold and lethal. What happened? Alexei spotted a car on the access road. Black SUV, tinted windows. It stopped about half a mile out, turned around. Could be nothing, but... It's not nothing, Nikolai said flatly. He turned to Ava. Inside.
Now.
They ran. Ava's boots slipped on the snow, and Nikolai caught her elbow, steadying her without slowing down. Inside the lodge, Alexei was at the window with binoculars, scanning the forest. 2 vehicles now, Alexei reported. Both SUVs. They're not coming closer, just watching. How did they find us? Ava's pulse hammered in her throat. Nikolai was already moving, pulling weapons from a locked cabinet. 2 handguns, a shotgun. He checked each with practiced efficiency. Could have followed us from the police station. Could have tracked my car. Doesn't matter now. He handed a pistol to Dmitri, kept the other. We need to move. They're waiting for reinforcements or orders. Or they're just making sure we're here before they call in something bigger, Dmitri said darkly. Ava's phone buzzed in her pocket. Unknown number. Her hand trembled as she answered. Hello. Miss Chun, Ethan Ward's voice was smooth, pleasant, like they were old friends. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Ava's blood went ice cold. Nikolai was beside her instantly, positioning his head close to hers so he could hear. How did you get this number? She asked. Please. You think I don't have resources? Ethan laughed. I wanted to apologize for last night. Things got heated. I may have been excessive. My colleagues, and I would like to make it right. Perhaps a generous cash settlement? Say, $100,000 for your trouble and your silence. I don't want your money. Everyone wants money, Miss Chun. Especially someone in your position. His tone hardened slightly. You're staying in a lodge off Mountain Ridge Road with a very dangerous man. That's not a safe situation. I'm concerned for your welfare. so they knew exactly where she was. Ava's stomach churned. "Let me be clear," Ethan continued. "The offer is generous, but it expires soon. Take the money, forget about whatever Volkov has told you, and walk away. Everyone goes home happy. And if I don't—" The silence that followed was pregnant with menace. "Then I can't guarantee your safety. These mountains are treacherous. Accidents happen. People disappear. It would be tragic if something happened to you, like what happened to your father." The threat was unmistakable. Ava's hand clenched around the phone. "You killed him. I'm saying the world is unpredictable, and you should be very careful about the choices you make. You have 2 hours to decide." "I'll call back." The line went dead. Nikolai's jaw was tight with fury. "Pack everything. We're leaving in 5 minutes." "Where?" Dmitri asked. "The resort. Public place, witnesses, security cameras. They won't try anything obvious there." Nikolai grabbed his laptop and began shoving equipment into a bag. "Ava, grab your things."
Stay close to me.
"Alexei, bring the car around to the back exit." Ava ran upstairs, her heart hammering. Through the bedroom window, she glimpsed movement in the tree line. Dark figures, at least 3 of them, moving closer. They were out of time. She grabbed the clothes she'd worn and rushed back downstairs. Nikolai took her hand. Back door. Fast and quiet. They moved through the lodge's rear entrance into a small clearing where Alexei had pulled a black sedan around. Dmitri provided cover, his gun trained on the forest. Ava dove into the back seat, Nikolai right behind her. "Go!" Nikolai shouted. Alexei floored it. The sedan fishtailed on the snowy driveway, then found traction and shot forward. Behind them, the 2 SUVs roared to life, engines screaming. "They're following," Dmitri called from the passenger seat. The mountain road was narrow, winding, treacherous. Alexei drove like a man possessed, taking corners at speeds that made Ava's stomach lurch. Trees blurred past. The SUVs stayed close, their superior size and power closing the distance. A crack split the air. The rear window starred with a bullet hole. "Get down!" Nikolai shoved Ava to the floor, covering her body with his own. More shots rang out, metal screaming as bullets struck the trunk. Alexei cursed in Russian and took a sharp turn onto an even narrower side road. The sedan bounced violently over ruts and rocks. One of the SUVs tried to follow but was too wide. It clipped a tree with a horrible crunch of metal. The second SUV was still coming. "Bridge ahead," Dmitri warned. Ava glimpsed it through the window, a rickety wooden bridge over a ravine, barely wide enough for one vehicle. Alexei didn't slow down. The sedan hit the bridge at full speed, boards rattling and creaking. They made it across. Behind them, the pursuing SUV braked hard, its driver less reckless. It started across the bridge, more slowly.
Too slowly.
With a groan of tortured wood, the bridge began to collapse. The SUV reversed frantically, just barely making it back to solid ground as the center section dropped into the ravine. Alexei kept driving, not slowing until they reached the main highway. Only then did Nikolai release Ava, helping her back onto the seat. Her whole body shook. "They tried to kill us." "Yes," Nikolai said simply. His hand was still on her shoulder, steadying her. "Now they've shown their hand. They're desperate. That means we're winning." "That doesn't feel like winning," Ava whispered. "It will," Nikolai promised, his eyes hard as steel. "Tonight, when we end this." The safe house was a penthouse suite at the Grand Summit Hotel, the newest, most expensive hotel in town, sitting directly across the plaza from the ski resort. Nikolai had reserved the entire top floor under a shell company name. "Hide in plain sight," he explained as they rode the elevator up. "They'll be watching remote locations. They won't expect us to be this close, surrounded by tourists and security." The suite was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the snow-covered valley, multiple bedrooms, a full kitchen, and enough space for Dmitri and Alexei to set up a command center in the living room. Within an hour, they transformed the elegant space into a war room. Laptops covered the dining table. Documents were spread across every surface. A police scanner crackled softly in the corner. Detective Morrison arrived at 3 o'clock, carrying 2 bankers' boxes and looking exhausted. Federal prosecutor is on board. State Attorney General is interested. But we need to solidify the timeline. She set the boxes on the table with a heavy thump. These are your father's business records from the bankruptcy proceedings. I need you to go through them, Ava. Mark anything that seems wrong, any decision that doesn't match what you remember. Ava stared at the boxes. Her father's entire professional life, reduced to paper in cardboard containers. I know it's hard, Morrison said more gently. But you knew your father's business better than anyone. You worked in that office every summer, helped with filing, sat in on meetings. Your memory is evidence. Nikolai brought Ava coffee and pulled up a chair beside her. You don't have to do this alone. Tell me what to look for. For the next 4 hours, they worked. Ava pulled out files and contracts, her hands trembling at first, then steadying as anger replaced grief. Nikolai took notes, cross-referencing dates and names with his own documents. The pieces fit together with sickening precision. Here, Ava held up a contract. This supplier, Chun Industries, had worked with them for 8 years. They suddenly terminated the contract, claiming quality issues. But look at the date. March 20th, Nikolai read. 5 days after I left. And 3 days after Ethan Ward's company bought shares in that same supplier. Ava's voice shook. My father called them, tried to negotiate. They wouldn't even speak to him. He thought he'd somehow offended them. Morrison leaned in. They were pressured to cut ties. Classic supply chain sabotage. Document after document revealed the same pattern. Bank loans called in early despite perfect payment history. Contracts mysteriously voided. Partners backing out after discovering concerns that had never existed before. And behind every incident, hidden in shell companies and offshore accounts, was Ward Industries. They were systematic, Dmitri observed, reading over Ava's shoulder. Like wolves separating prey from the herd. Cut off resources, isolate the target, then move in for the kill. 12 other companies, Morrison said. 12 families destroyed. Some of the owners lost everything like your father. One committed suicide. Another is still in prison on false fraud charges that we can now prove were fabricated. Ava felt sick. All this for money. Money and power, Nikolai said. They acquired valuable assets for pennies on the dollar, then resold them for massive profits. Conservative estimate? $300 million over 5 years. Morrison's phone buzzed. She checked it and stood quickly. Warrants are approved. We move at 8 tonight, during the gala's main dinner service. Maximum attendance, maximum press coverage. She looked at Ava. You still willing to be there? Ava thought of her father, working late into the night, trying to solve a problem that had no solution because the game was rigged. She thought of her mother, withering away from grief. 3 years of loss and shame and struggle. Yes, she said firmly. I want to see their faces when they realize they lost. Good. Morrison gathered her things. Dress nice. Play the part. Nikolai will have an earpiece. I'll communicate through him. When we move in, you stay calm and let us handle it. She paused at the door. And Miss Chun, your father would be proud of you. After Morrison left, Ava stood at the window, watching snow begin to fall over the valley. Behind her, she heard Nikolai dismiss Dmitri and Alexei, sending them to prepare for the evening. Then his footsteps approached. There's a dress in the bedroom, he said quietly. I had it sent over. I hope it fits. Ava turned. You think of everything. I try. He studied her face. How are you holding up? I'm angry, she admitted. Angrier than I've been in years. Is that wrong?
No.
Anger is useful. It keeps you sharp. He moved to stand beside her at the window. But don't let it consume you. We win by staying smart, not by acting reckless. I know. She watched the lights come on across the valley as dusk settled. Somewhere over there, Ethan Ward was preparing for his triumphant charity gala, believing he was untouchable. Nikolai? What happens after tonight? After they're arrested? You get your life back. Clear your father's name. Rebuild the company if you want. Whatever future you choose. And you? He was quiet for a long moment. That depends on what you want. Ava's reflection in the window showed a woman she barely recognized, stronger, harder, forged by loss but not broken by it. Tonight would end one chapter. Tomorrow would begin another. Let's get through tonight first, she said, echoing her words from the lake. Then we'll see. Nikolai nodded, and they stood together watching darkness fall, preparing for the battle ahead. The dress was midnight blue, elegant and simple, with a neckline that was modest but striking. Ava stared at herself in the full-length mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back. For 3 years, she'd been invisible, the struggling waitress, the daughter of a failed businessman, someone people looked past without seeing. Tonight, she looked like someone who mattered. She emerged from the bedroom to find the suite empty, except for Nikolai. He stood by the fireplace in a perfectly tailored black suit, staring into the flames. When he heard her, he turned, and something flickered in his expression. Surprise, admiration, something deeper he quickly controlled. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Where are Dmitri and Alexei?" "Already at the resort. They'll be positioned throughout the venue," he checked his watch. "We have an hour before we need to leave." Morrison's team is in position. Ava should sit down, review the plan again, stay focused. Instead, she found herself walking to the fireplace, standing beside Nikolai in the warm glow. The question that had haunted her at the lake came back, sharper now. "If you loved me," she said quietly, "why didn't you take me with you instead of disappearing?" Nikolai's shoulders tensed. "Ava. No, I need to understand." "Really understand," she turned to face him. "You say you left to protect me, but you didn't trust me enough to make that choice myself. You didn't trust me to be strong enough to handle the truth. It wasn't about trust. Then what was it about?" Her voice rose despite her efforts to control it. "Because from where I stood, it felt like abandonment. Like I wasn't worth fighting for. Like you decided I was too weak, too fragile, too insufficient to be part of your real life." "That's not true." Nikolai's composure cracked, emotion flooding his face. "God, Ava, that's not true at all. You were the only good thing in my world. The only clean, honest, beautiful thing I had." "Then why?" "Because I was terrified." The words burst from him like they'd been locked away too long. "I was terrified that my world would contaminate yours. That my enemies would hurt you because of me. That I'd get you killed and have to live with that for the rest of my miserable life." He moved closer, his hands clenched at his sides. "You want the truth? I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust that I could keep you safe if you stayed close. So I made the choice for both of us, because I was a coward." Ava's breath caught. She'd expected excuses, justifications. Not this raw admission of fear. "Every day for 3 years I watched you," Nikolai continued, his voice rough. "From a distance, always careful, but I watched. When you moved to that apartment on Maple Street, I was the one who made sure the heat worked through winter. When you got sick that autumn and couldn't afford medicine, a hospital charity fund mysteriously covered your bills. When your landlord tried to evict you, he suddenly decided to extend your lease. That was you." Ava whispered. "All of it. I couldn't be near you, couldn't touch you, couldn't tell you I was there. But I never stopped protecting you. Never stopped loving you." His voice broke on the last word. "I watched you bury your parents alone because I couldn't risk showing myself. I watched you work double shifts until you could barely stand. I watched you survive day after day, and I was so damn proud of you, and so angry at myself for not being there in a way that mattered." Tears streamed down Ava's face. 3 years of pain and loneliness and feeling abandoned suddenly reframed, not as rejection, but as the most painful act of love she could imagine. "I needed you," she said, her voice breaking. "Not money or fixed heaters or charity funds. I needed you, the actual you, standing beside me. I know. And I failed you." Nikolai's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I thought distance would keep you safe, but it just hurt you in a different way. If I could go back, if I could do it differently. But you can't." Ava wiped her face, smearing makeup she'd carefully applied. We can't go back. We can only go forward. I know, he reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he cupped her face in his hands, his touch achingly gentle. But I need you to know, leaving you was the hardest thing I've ever done. Not being with you these 3 years has been torture. And if you give me another chance, I swear I'll never make that choice for you again. I'll trust you to be as strong as I know you are. I'll trust us to face whatever comes together. Ava closed her eyes, feeling his warmth, his solid presence. Part of her wanted to stay angry, to nurse her hurt like armor. But anger was exhausting, and she was so tired of being alone. I forgive you, she whispered. The words felt like releasing a weight she'd carried for years. I don't know if I can trust you completely yet, but I forgive you. Nikolai let out a shuddering breath. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her, and she let herself sink into the embrace. They stood there by the fireplace as the flames danced, holding each other. 3 years of separation finally bridged. After tonight, Nikolai murmured into her hair, no more shadows. No more secrets. Just us, figuring it out together. Together, Ava agreed softly. They had 20 minutes before they needed to leave. 20 minutes of peace before walking into danger. They spent it in silence, holding each other, gathering strength for the battle ahead. The resort's grand ballroom glittered like something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in white silk. 500 guests in evening wear sipped champagne and laughed, their jewelry catching the light. A string quartet played softly near the stage where a banner proclaimed, Alpine Children's Fund Annual Gala, building tomorrow's future. Ava's hand tightened on Nikolai's arm as they entered. Every instinct screamed at her to run. Breathe, Nikolai murmured, guiding her smoothly through the crowd. You belong here more than any of them. Their table was near the front, prime positioning that had cost Nikolai a fortune. Dmitri was already seated there, looking uncomfortable in a tuxedo, pretending to be a business associate. Alexei was positioned by the bar, nursing a drink and watching the exits. Across the room, Ava spotted them. Ethan Ward held court at the center table, surrounded by his 3 friends and several prominent businessmen. He wore a white dinner jacket and a smile that made Ava's skin crawl. When his eyes found her, the smile faltered for just a moment before returning, sharper. He said something to his companions. They all turned to look. He knows we're here, Ava whispered.
Good.
Let him wonder why. Nikolai pulled out her chair with perfect courtesy, playing his role flawlessly, the mysterious European businessman with money and connections. The state senator arrived with a flurry of activity, cameras flashing, people rushing to greet him. Ethan positioned himself for a photo opportunity, shaking hands, his arm around the senator's shoulders. The picture of respectability. Waiters began serving the first course. Ava couldn't eat, her stomach tight with tension. She touched the small earpiece Nikolai had given her, currently silent, but connected to Morrison's team outside. Patience, Nikolai said quietly, sensing her anxiety. Everything is in motion. Halfway through dinner, Ethan approached their table. His smile was predatory. Mr. Volkov, what a surprise to see you here. Nikolai stood smoothly, extending his hand. Mr. Ward, I heard this was the premier charity event of the season. I wanted to see for myself. They shook hands like civilized men. Ava watched Ethan's knuckles go white with the pressure of Nikolai's grip. And Miss Chun, Ethan turned to her, his eyes cold despite his smile. You've certainly moved up in the world since last night. New dress, new company. Quite a transformation. Mr. Ward, Ava kept her voice level, channeling every ounce of her father's dignity. Enjoying your evening?
Immensely.
Though I'm surprised you'd show your face here after our misunderstanding. He leaned closer, lowering his voice so only their table could hear. You should have taken my offer.
2 hours, I said.
You made a poor choice. The only poor choice, Nikolai said pleasantly, his hand moving to Ava's shoulder, was yours. Threatening Miss Chun was unwise. Something dangerous flashed in Ethan's eyes. Is that a threat? Simply an observation. The earpiece crackled to life. Morrison's voice. 30 seconds. Keep him talking. Ava's heart hammered against her ribs. 30 seconds until 3 years of pain and loss finally meant something. Gentlemen, please. Ethan spread his hands in mock peace. This is a charity event. We're here to help children, not engage in petty disputes. He raised his voice, projecting to nearby tables. In fact, I'd like to invite Mr. Volkov to join us on stage in a moment. We're announcing this year's major donations. Perhaps you'd like to contribute. I have a better announcement, Nikolai said. The ballroom doors opened. Detective Morrison entered, followed by 6 uniformed officers and 2 federal agents in dark suits. The quartet stopped playing. Conversation died like a candle snuffed out. Ethan's face went pale. What is this? Morrison walked straight to their table, her badge held high. Ethan Ward, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, racketeering, money laundering, and corruption. Her voice carried across the silent ballroom. You have the right to remain silent. This is insane. Ethan backed away. Senator, tell them, this is harassment. But the senator was already moving away, distancing himself as cameras flashed and reporters surged forward. Morrison's officers moved through the crowd, heading for the other 3 men at Ethan's table. James Chun, Michael Russo, David Park, you're also under arrest. Chaos erupted. Guests stood, voices rising in confusion and excitement. Reporters shouted questions. Ethan tried to run, but 2 officers blocked his path. Ava stood, her legs shaking but her voice clear and strong. You destroyed my father. The words cut through the noise. Chun Industries wasn't a failure. You sabotaged it. You murdered him with your corruption. Every camera in the room swung toward her. You don't know what you're talking about, Ethan snarled, struggling as officers handcuffed him. Your father was weak. My father was honest. Tears streamed down Ava's face, but she didn't care. He built something real while you stole from families and hid behind charity. You're a thief and a liar, and everyone here knows it now. Morrison stepped forward with a folder, holding it up for the cameras. We have documented evidence of systematic fraud targeting 12 companies over 5 years. Chun Industries was one of many victims. The full details will be released to the press tomorrow. The officers led the 4 men toward the exits. Ethan looked back once, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. This isn't over. Yes, Ava said quietly, though somehow he heard her. It is. The ballroom erupted in noise, reporters shouting questions, guests gossiping frantically, staff trying to restore order. Nikolai's arm came around Ava's shoulders, steady and protective. You did it, he murmured. It's done. Ava watched the doors close behind Ethan Ward, watched justice finally catch up with the man who destroyed her family. She should feel victorious, triumphant. Instead, she just felt tired. And free. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters, cameras, and microphones. Ava stood at the podium, Detective Morrison beside her, and tried not to shake. 6 days had passed since the gala arrests. 6 days of testimony, depositions, and evidence review that had unraveled Ward Industries' entire criminal operation. Miss Chun, a reporter called out. How does it feel to clear your father's name? Ava looked down at the prepared statement in her hands, then folded it and put it away. Some things needed to be said from the heart. My father, David Chun, was a brilliant businessman and a good man. For 3 years, I believed he'd failed, that somehow he'd made mistakes that cost us everything. I watched him die thinking he wasn't good enough. Her voice wavered, but held. Learning the truth, that he was deliberately destroyed by criminals. It doesn't bring him back. It doesn't undo the pain. But it gives him back his dignity. His legacy. What do you say to the other families affected by Ward Industries fraud? Another reporter asked. That I see you. That your loved ones didn't fail either. That we're all victims of people who believed money and power put them above the law. Ava's hands gripped the podium. But they were wrong. Justice might be slow, but it's real. Morrison stepped forward. The state attorney general has confirmed that all 4 defendants, Ethan Ward, James Chun, Michael Russo, and David Park, have accepted plea agreements rather than face trial. They'll serve a combined total of 63 years in federal prison. Additionally, restitution will be paid to all affected families from the seizure of Ward Industries assets. More questions flew, but Morrison wrapped up the press conference. As they descended the steps, Ava was surrounded by people, lawyers, victim advocates, families of the other destroyed companies. An older woman hugged her, crying, "My husband ran Jenkins Manufacturing. He died thinking he'd failed. Thank you. Thank you for fighting." Ava held her, both of them weeping, sharing grief that finally had validation. Nikolai waited at the bottom of the steps, a quiet shadow keeping his distance but always present. Over the past week, he'd stayed close but careful, never pushing, never demanding, just there when she needed him. He'd testified about how he'd gathered evidence, submitted to hours of questions from federal prosecutors, all while maintaining his careful balance between helpful and unthreatening. When Ava finally extracted herself from the grateful families, he fell into step beside her. "The car is around the corner." They drove in silence through town, past familiar streets that looked different now. The bank where her father's loans had been called in. The office building where Chun Industries once thrived on the 5th floor. The church where she'd buried both parents, believing their deaths were the result of failure rather than murder. "Stop," Ava said suddenly. Nikolai pulled over at the cemetery gates. "You want to go in?" She nodded. They walked together through the rows of headstones dusted with late morning snow. Her parents were buried side by side under a simple granite marker. Ava had only been able to afford the most basic stone, David and Margaret Chun, beloved parents with their dates. She knelt in the snow, not caring about her coat. "Dad, Mom, I hope you know now. I hope wherever you are, you can finally rest knowing the truth came out. That your name is cleared. That everyone knows you didn't fail." Tears came again, but softer this time. Healing tears, not breaking ones. Nikolai stood back, giving her space. When she finally stood, brushing snow from her knees, he was there with a steadying hand. "They'd be proud of you," he said quietly. "Your strength. Your courage. What you did took more bravery than most people have. I couldn't have done it without you." Ava looked up at him. "The evidence you gathered, the way you protected me, I know I said I didn't trust you, but Nikolai, you earned it back. Over this past week, you earned it back." Something shifted in his expression, relief, hope, cautious joy. "Ava, I'm not saying everything's perfect. We still have things to work through, conversations to finish. But I want to try. Really try." She took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "You asked me at the lake to let you earn back my trust. You did. Now I'm asking, do you still want this? Want us?" More than anything, his voice was rough with emotion. "Every day for 3 years, all I wanted was to come back to you. To have another chance. Then we'll take it. One day at a time. No more secrets. No more leaving. No more leaving," he promised. "Whatever comes, we face it together." They stood in the cemetery, holding each other, while snow fell softly around them. Ava felt something settle in her chest, not the absence of pain, but the presence of peace. Her parents were gone, their deaths still tragic, but their memory was honored now. Their truth was known. Behind them, a car engine started. Dmitri, ever watchful, giving them privacy but ready to drive them home whenever they were ready. Home. The word meant something different now. Not a place she'd lost, but a future she was choosing. With Nikolai, with truth, with the possibility of building something new from the ashes of what was destroyed. "Ready?" Nikolai asked softly. Ava took one last look at her parents' graves, then turned toward the future.
"Yes."
"Let's go home." The airport terminal buzzed with activity, families reuniting, business people rushing to gates, the constant drone of announcements echoing overhead. Ava stood near the departure board, a single suitcase beside her, staring at the gate number for the flight to San Francisco. Chun Industries' former headquarters had been purchased by a holding company after the bankruptcy. Yesterday, that holding company, revealed to be one of Nikolai's legitimate business entities, had transferred ownership back to her for $1. The building, the name, the legacy, all of it returned. She had a meeting with investors in 2 days, a business plan drafted with the help of 3 lawyers, and a vision for rebuilding what her father had started. It should have felt like victory, like coming full circle. Instead, she felt hollow. "Your flight boards in 20 minutes, Dmitri said, appearing with 2 cups of coffee. He'd insisted on driving her to the airport, claiming security concerns, but Ava suspected he'd grown fond of her over the past 2 weeks. Thanks, she accepted the cup, but didn't drink. "He's at the office," Dmitri said, reading her thoughts. Final meeting with the federal prosecutors. Closing statements about the investigation. Ava nodded. She and Nikolai had agreed this was best, clean break, no messy goodbyes. She needed to focus on rebuilding her company.
He needed to.
Well, she wasn't entirely sure what Nikolai needed to do. Return to whatever business had kept him busy for 3 years. Disappear back into the shadows where he was most comfortable. They'd agreed. It made sense. So, why did it feel like her chest was being crushed? "He loves you, you know," Dmitri's accented voice was matter-of-fact. "I've worked for Nikolai for 8 years. Never seen him like this. Never seen him care about anything except the work. I love him too," Ava admitted quietly. "But love isn't always enough. We have different lives, different worlds. I'm rebuilding a legitimate business. She gestured vaguely, unsure how to describe what Nikolai was. "Trying to be a better man," Dmitri finished.
"For you."
"Because of you." The announcement crackled overhead. Flight 447 to San Francisco now boarding at gate 23. Ava picked up her suitcase. This was it. Forward motion. New chapter. Everything she'd fought for. "Take care of him," she told Dmitri. "Wait." Dmitri pulled out his phone, frowned at it, then looked toward the terminal entrance. "Just wait 1 moment." Ava turned, and her breath caught. Nikolai was running through the terminal, dodging travelers and luggage carts, his tie loosened and his coat flying behind him. He looked frantic, desperate, completely unlike the controlled man she'd come to know. He skidded to a stop in front of her, breathing hard. "Don't go." "Nikolai," Ava's heart hammered. "What are you doing here? You had the meeting." "I left." Walked out in the middle, he took her hands, gripping them like she might vanish. "Ava, I've spent 3 years making the smart choice, the safe choice, the logical choice. And all it did was make us both miserable. We agreed this was best." "We were wrong." His eyes were intense, searching hers. "You said no more leaving. No more distance. But that's exactly what we're doing. I'm letting you walk away because it seems sensible, and you're leaving because you think you have to do this alone. I'm rebuilding my father's company. That's in California. Your business, your life, it's here. My business is portable. My life is wherever you are." Nikolai's voice softened. "I spent 3 years watching you from a distance, telling myself it was for the best. I won't make that mistake again. If you want to rebuild Chun Industries in California, then I'll move to California. If you want to do it here, we'll stay here. I don't care where we are as long as we're together." Tears blurred Ava's vision. "You'd really leave everything?" "I'd leave anything for you. Haven't you figured that out yet?" He cupped her face, his touch gentle. 3 years ago, I left to protect you. It was the wrong choice. I won't make it again. Whatever comes, rival businessmen, complications, difficulties, we face it together. That's what you said in the cemetery. Did you mean it?" "Yes," Ava whispered. "But Nikolai, I can't ask you to give up your whole life." "You're not asking. I'm choosing," he smiled, and it transformed his face, made him look younger, lighter. "I'm choosing you. I'm choosing us. I'm choosing to stop being afraid of what might go wrong and start building what could go right." Final boarding call for Flight 447 to San Francisco. Ava looked at the gate, then back at Nikolai. The safe choice, the logical choice, was to get on that plane. Handle business alone.
Keep things simple.
But she'd learned something over the past 2 weeks. Safe choices had left her lonely. Logic had left her aching. And simple wasn't always better. The investors can do video conference, she said slowly. And San Francisco has airports. I can fly out for meetings when needed. Hope blazed in Nikolai's eyes. You're staying?
I'm staying.
We'll figure out the details, where to live, how to balance everything. But we figured out together. She stood on her toes and kissed him, pouring 3 years of loneliness and loss and love into it. No more distance. No more leaving. Should I cancel the security detail following her to California? They broke apart, laughing. Ava grabbed her suitcase. Take me home. Wherever home is now. Home is us, Nikolai said simply, taking her free hand. Everything else, we'll build together. They walked through the terminal together, past the gates and the departures board, toward the exit and the winter sunshine beyond. Snow was beginning to fall again. Soft, clean, covering the world in white. Through the glass doors, Ava could see the mountains rising in the distance, the valley spread below, the town where she'd lost everything and found herself again. Where she'd learned that justice was possible, that love could survive distance, that strength came from facing truth instead of running from it. Her father's company would rise again, built on the foundation of his integrity. Her mother's memory would live on in the gardens Ava planned to plant. And her own future, that was unwritten, full of possibility, shared with someone who'd learned to choose love over fear. Nikolai squeezed her hand as they stepped outside. The cold air was sharp and clean, full of promise. Ready? He asked. Ava looked up at him. This complicated, dangerous, devoted man who'd protected her from shadows and then stepped into the light to stand beside her. Ready, she said. And together, they walked toward whatever came next, leaving the past behind and choosing each other, again and again, with every step forward into the snow.
The end.